Is the microwave too noisy? Is the microwave too noisy?
No, Phil, I'm busy right now. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us tonight.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
But thanks for joining us tonight. Are you driving?
Yeah, I am. I have to pick up my wife. We're down to one car, so
Hi, Craig. I'm going to start letting folks in just a minute. Oh, never mind. I see Mitch was trying to get in here. Hi, Mitch.
Hi, Marty.
I was just trying to find the link. I'm glad you're able to find it.
Yeah, I found it on our website. I know it was sent in an email, but I couldn't
Those
find
are
it.
hard to track over time. I wanted to see if is there anything we need to chat about before we start the meeting? I have right now we have about 20 people waiting to get in.
Okay. Well, I was just going to do a brief introduction. Oh, wait, I don't have my audio, do I?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I mean my video.
Oh,
Not right now.
right. I don't see you.
Oh, you'll do it later. Okay.
Oh, you can do it. No,
Oh.
you can do it.
Where?
So it should be.
Oh, got it. I'm so sorry. I'm so lame.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to do a brief introduction on myself, the board, why we're holding this this meeting, and let everyone know that you'll be sort of the director of the proceedings, master of ceremony, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, if you'd like, I can go over the agenda. So I guess as you click through, then I'll read the agenda and hand it over to Kirk.
Okay.
That
So we
sound
have Kirk and Joe and Jerry just joined us.
okay?
Hello, Marty.
Hi, Kirk. So we have about 3 minutes before we start.
Okay.
Mitch and I were just going over the agenda and your role and kind of the timing. And so Mitch will finish in about 3 minutes, and then you'll have a little bit less than 12 minutes to wrap up. And then I'll just keep track of time if we need it. Like we talked about today, I'll text you if we need it.
Oh, great. I'm sure I will. Always do. And yeah, just put, don't put any extra oxygen in the room. That's the key. Just strengthen me. I wanted to let you know that I think that Jen Holland is the president of the newest, smallest neighborhood in Greater Land Park. And
Right.
I think we'll honor her by asking her if she has question. Let her ask 2 questions of Katie and then 2 questions of Matt. So when I'm done with the questions, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute her and let her ask a couple of questions.
Okay.
Rather than have her make a presentation, she has questions. She has four questions in total she wants to ask. I think that's a nice gesture too, because it allows the attention to get off us and onto a small neighborhood association.
All right. I think we're ready. We have about 35 people waiting. I'm going to let in. Hi, Joe. Hi, Craig.
Hi,
Thank you guys for joining us.
I'm looking forward to a
Thank
great
you.
event.
Hi. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and
Oh, Marty, you have me as set up as host for screen share?
you don't need it. Mine's all set up so you can share.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to start letting folks in. So
Okay.
I'll be in and out because I'm cooking dinner.
okay. What are we having tonight, Joe?
Bring some over to me, Craig.
Well, I'm doing a red beans rice kind of gumbo
Oh,
with
We
pork.
sat across the street from you like the old days. The old
Yeah.
days a month ago.
well,
Yeah.
I can smell it from here. I'm having sushi cafe tonight. Bento.
Oh, there you go. That works.
Yeah.
Which
Haven't been there in a
you can
while.
have delivered to us.
My wife's going to pick it up. Oh, what do you guys want? No.
I'll take a bento box.
Yeah.
There you go. Oh, I got to feed my dogs. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Come here.
Welcome everybody who's joining us to the Land Park Community Association's Land Use Committee meeting. It's great to have you here.
Do we have our guests, Marty? Our special guests?
Hello.
Let's see, but
Oh, hi. Hi, Councilwoman. Good to see you.
Good
Yep.
to see you.
So it is, welcome Katie, thank you. I'm Marty and your assistant Michaela was wonderful in getting this set up. So thanks for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. I'm only sorry I can't stay for the entire time, but I'm glad Michelle will be on for the last bit when I got to jump off. So.
You have a few things going on. We appreciate it. So Mitch, it is 6:15. Why don't we go ahead and-
Yes. Hi. Again, welcome everyone. I appreciate everyone taking time out of their evening for this very important topic. My name is Mitch Rohr. I'm the president of the Land Park Community Association. We wanted to hold this meeting tonight. It's an informational meeting. Certainly there will be some question and answers along the way. It's not a debate. So we're not going to engage in any sort of heated dialogue. So bear that in mind. Marty Martinez will be the master of ceremonies. So he will mute and unmute as needed. And then before we begin, I'd like to introduce some of the board members who might be on the meeting, might be on the call in addition to Marty Martinez. We have Kirk Fiverberg, who is the chairman of our land use committee. Joseph Zada, who is our vice president. Craig Rutledge, one of our board members. And I can't see everyone, unfortunately. So if I missed anyone, please let me know. Finally, we want to let the audience know that we're not holding this meeting tonight to specifically represent the interest of Land Park. We're holding this meeting tonight to represent the interest of the whole city of Sacramento, regardless of what zip code you live in, what economic background you're from, or any other background you're from, frankly. So we feel this is an issue that will affect the whole city, not just Land Park. So with that, I'll go ahead and hand it over to Kirk. I don't know if I missed anything. We have, as you can see, looking at the list there.
Press that.
We've collected several questions from the community, so we've tried to cull those down, and for the sake of time, to make sure that we get all the questions answered. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with Kirk and let the games begin.
Great. Well, thank you. I don't know, am I on here in video? Just want to make sure everybody can hear all right. Okay. I wanted to also greet a couple of special guests. We've got Tricia Stevens here from the president of East Sacramento Association. And we're hoping that Jen Holland, who's the president of the newest neighborhood association in Sacramento, Mangan Park, small but ambitious. And I'm hoping that she'll be able to ask a couple of direct questions of our honored guests here tonight.
Okay. Now,
so if you'd go ahead and mute yourself, thank you. If you're not talking, that'd be great. And we're going to try and give a brief overview tonight of what the strategies are of the city and the alternative proposal, what the issues are that need to be considered in each, the challenges, so to speak, to each. After all, these are just plans. Some people say plans are jokes for the gods, but they are plans. They're our best estimate for the city staff, who are great planning people here. I see that Greg Sunland is with us, as well as Matt and Remy, and I'm really happy for that. So let me get started, and I'm going to share a screen here. If I can. Okay. We're in the middle of a process. The process is now in its second phase, but we're actually starting the third.
I want to stop you for a second. Your screen is not sharing.
Oh, thank you.
Make sure you hit the share button.
All right. Start share, yes. Oh, I see. That's an extra button you have on yours. Great. I think that should do it. Thank you, Marty. How about now?
We can see you. Thank you.
You see this image. Okay, well, we're talking this evening about land use. There's two land use proposals. One has to do with the corridors and adding density to the corridors, and the other has to do with, and that density can be for all types of housing, but also right up from 2 to 4 to 6 story mixed use development, as well as smaller housing in and some of the missing middle housing on the corridors. But we're going to focus on missing middle tonight. And as you can see on the right-hand side, we've got a mid-rise that is one part. At the other end, we've got detached single-family home. And what's generally not found in Sacramento's 70% of Sacramento's land is the missing middle. 70% is detached single-family homes. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is how to add an increased variety of housing into our neighborhoods. The strategy proposal was to permit a greater array of housing types in existing single unit neighborhoods. Single unit, single family, interchangeable terms. It says here that the single family zoning has contributed, and this is the reason why they want part of the justification for the city, has contributed to neighborhood racial segregation in cities throughout the US by keeping out those who can't afford a single family house. Changing Sacramento zoning to allow duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes in all residential neighborhoods could help integrate these neighborhoods and provide more affordable options for people of all backgrounds and ages. Question is, would you support or oppose this change? Now, the fundamental response was that there were 40% that would strongly support this change. Now, this is part of their community engagement program. It was 3-phase. It was surveys, it was interviews, it was workshops. And we did the same thing. We had about 135 people on in one of 4 different community conversations on this subject and on mid-rise density building for mixed use, both. And we found pretty much the same thing. We surveyed our people, found that 40% would give this strong consideration. What would tip it over to a majority would be this 28% that somewhat support. So we plumbed the questions that they needed to answer to be able to understand whether they could support it. And one of the fundamental questions they had is, what does it mean to permit greater array of housing types in existing single unit neighborhoods? Those people that interpreted that as in or within, it got stated in different ways, said they thought that they could support it if they had a couple of more questions answered, like would we still maintain our zoning limitations for height and setbacks, et cetera. But the key was, would we be able to place those houses in opportunity areas that we as a community identified? It wasn't until if we answered the question throughout existing single unit neighborhoods as a uniform change, the resistance went much higher. So at that point, we, through our survey, defined our position as a support to increasing the variety of housing types in the neighborhood, but that was with community participation in identifying the opportunity zones for this.
Kirk,
Also,
you have 5 minutes remaining in your time slot.
Well, thank you. I wanted to show you one of how we would go about discussing this. I think that that to get back to this is that we agree with the principles that are here in that there are common needs for affordability, for housing, for sustainability. Those we see are common needs, and we share in the principles of the plan, which that livability, which is really the section we're talking about here, keeping Sacramento and Sacramento's future highly livable, is a result of a combination of social equity, environmental sustainability, historic preservation, and community enhancement. All of those principles add up to livability. So the question is, would we support this? Yes, but not in the upzoning or as a broad brush change. Zoning, so what is zoning? Zoning answers the question where you place land use answers the question where you place density, mixed use, and missing middle. It answers the question where. That's why we're going to discuss zoning maps and land use maps. Zoning, which follows land use, answers how you place those buildings, their height, their mass, and their setbacks. There are challenges. The challenges are these. Affordability by design. Can we design affordable houses today and that can meet the needs of all levels of income for housing? And how do we do that? What is affordability by design? We're going to look at that very quickly. And also, the second question is, how do we avoid gentrification, which is building upward mobility and financial security for families through home ownership rather than investor gentrification, investor return. So here's some examples. These are small houses within Land Park. Land Park's area is there in yellow. This is called Greater Land Park. We're made up of 6 neighborhoods in Greater Land Park that are highly diverse. The pink, dark pink elements on the right are our corridors of Franklin and Freeport and predominantly, and Broadway up at the top. And so the question is, how dense should we build in our corridors, and should we allow for this increased middle market housing all throughout our neighborhoods? The existing houses in Land Park go all the way from $350,000 to $500,000 cottages and small homes that are throughout these various neighborhoods, 6 neighborhoods. They include duplexes at all levels and on almost every neighborhood corner, and already have a number of ADUs, or additional dwelling units. You can see here that they fit quite nicely in backyards. They match the architectural feel of the houses, and they maintain each other's privacy through good design standards. We have also these community centers. These community centers are little treasures, and we like to activate them as much as possible and generate business for them. So one of the alternatives we're looking at is to increase these housing types and low density mixed use buildings like this with commercial on the ground floor, 2 levels of residential on the top in our community centers. This, we're also looking at, row houses or townhouses like these in Oak Park, and cluster houses like these from downtown. Now, those townhouses in Oak Park and these cluster houses fit right into the $350,000 to $500,000 category of the existing houses in a number of our neighborhoods that are available today, but they don't add to affordability. They sort of match it. Now, here's a triplex, and this triplex is set next to an old duplex. This is in South Park on 4th and T Street. As you look in the back, there's another triplex behind it. And behind the house to the right, there's another triplex. So these are 3 lots that have 3 triplexes on them. Each triplex has a 700 square foot apartment with 2 bedrooms. That is affordability by design. Yet the price of these apartments are $2,000 today for a 700 square foot apartment, and with a $200 addition fee for parking if you can get one of the 4 spaces. So I'm not quite sure that that would actually, this would open up affordability in our area. This is how all 3 of them were tied together, which in a way is architecturally challenging. Around the corner are 4 houses that are townhouses. These townhouses are about 2,200 square feet. The back of them have 2 balconies. They have parking in the back, and they look directly into the residential community behind them. What is given up here is the privacy of the neighborhoods, but what is maximized is the square footage of lot and living space. These townhouses are priced at $880,000 in Southland Park. These are off Alhambra row houses under development currently. Again, about 2,000 square foot. The price on these is $770,000. The point being here is that a lot of these zoning changes will lead to investor investment. They will lead to gentrification, and they will not put money into the pockets of young families, but more likely investor groups. This is the challenge of gentrification. What do you give up when you take the risk to go in this direction? This is FAR. Very quickly, think of it as Legos. Your FAR of 1 covers the entire square footage. Excuse me, would you mute, please? Thank you. And secondly,
just scroll down till you see the link for the Zoom meeting.
And we see that FAR1 could be 2 stories covering half a lot. That's typical of a house in a residential neighborhood. And finally, FAR2 can be up to 4 stories if they need parking in front. So this is what happens with FAR2 for our small commercial centers. If we approve that, it could actually be a 4-story building. So that's how FAR works. I want you to know we're going quickly, but this is all recorded, and much of this information is available on the LPCA website, landpark.org, under land use. This is how it translates into looks. These are FAR3. They take up completely the square footage of their lots. There is almost 0 setback. It's about 4 feet. They're 3 stories tall. And so what you give up in this affordable housing is space around you. These are townhouses that also don't look like they're large cubes, but they actually are. And next to each other, they have no side windows in the front and the back. So that's quite a bit like loft living. And they look out into Curtis Park in the back. So no skinny dipping over there in the pool. And looking from the other direction, we see ADUs here in the foreground in Curtis Park, as well as pools looking up into the back of the townhouses. The other thing in Curtis Park is cluster homes. These cluster homes are enormous. They are, again, FAR ruled in that they fill the majority of their lot and are quite square. Also, squareness helps to lower the cost of the square footage in the house. So that's what those are like. Now, here's a very good example of an FAR1. These are new homes, again, in Curtis Park, Curtis Village. And you'll notice that they've taken some of the mass out of the back of the building and put it up on the second floor, giving themselves backyards and giving themselves a nice transition to the neighborhood in the back. And they've done that with new architecture in the front. So you can buy there a Spanish style home, a Tudor home, or a Craftsman style home. This is very successful. What I want to conclude is by saying that Land Park and a number of neighborhoods, older neighborhoods, our neighborhood's 100 years old, Land Park proper, and are already highly dense. But we do have in Greater Land Park, in our planning area, opportunity areas that are significant. This is down below City College, right along the rails. So you can see a lot of open and unused land. This is down above Fruit Ridge and at the corner of Fruit Ridge and Franklin. Again, a lot of available land. This is up on Broadway around the Caltrans and Catholic Church property at the east end of our section of Broadway. Almost all the land is taken up by cars. And this is at the other end of Broadway. Yes,
Kirk, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to run out of time for Katie to share. It's now.
That's all right. This is the wrap. This is the upper end of Land Park, where we have 50% of the affordable, capital A affordable subsidized housing in Sacramento. So in conclusion, the way a neighborhood like Greater Land Park can contribute to the housing strategies is through its diversification in neighborhoods. we already have highly diversified neighborhoods with a number of housing types and affordability at a wide degree of ranges. But we are willing to add more and put the community back in community planning. We also ask that West Sacramento does its part, because you can see there that most of the land available for solving our housing crisis in the area and environmental crisis of keeping vehicle miles traveled down is in the building of West Sacramento. So we ask for a cooperative plan through the City Council. That's it. Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Katie. And okay. And stop broadcasting.
Hey, Kirk, we're ready for Katie. It's all
Yeah,
stopped.
go right ahead. Katie, welcome. And can you, would you like to start with a little opening statement, an overview of your perspective?
And also, Katie, welcome
Sure.
to your first official meeting with Land Park Community Association. We appreciate you being here.
I appreciate being here. Thank you for the invitation. And sorry we can't be doing this in person, but fingers crossed that'll be happening soon. I hope you're all doing well. I'm Katie Valenzuela, the new council member for District 4. I'm really pleased to be here tonight, and the level of engagement in the general plan process. This is what we all hope for and dream for, is that there'd be almost 100 people on a Wednesday night after work when we're fatigued, ready to talk about the general plan. It's just really incredible. So my position, as for some of you who may not know me from the campaign or personally, is I am a renter. I work a good job. You know, a lot of my friends in Midtown, we are all renters working state jobs. Some of us are with partners who also work state jobs. And the unfortunate reality I want to start off with is that the dream of home ownership is pretty much gone for a lot of us right now. Those $300,000 homes that Kirk mentioned, if we're lucky enough to see those go onto the market, are often grabbed up real quick, usually by folks who have cash, usually by folks who are ready to go up above the appraised value of the home. And that's caused a lot of heartbreak for a lot of people I know who are looking to settle down, who want to start a family, who want a yard, who want to live in a great neighborhood. As we've slowly realized that cute house that went on the sale around the corner from us is starting at $1.3 billion, and there's just no way that we're ever going to be able to attain that. So I think just some grounding of just how much have changed in Sacramento's housing market. Roxanne, we're seeing your screen. I don't know if you can tell, but anyhow, just wanted to make sure you were aware. So the housing market has fundamentally changed in Sacramento, and I'm not going to sit here and say that this policy is going to solve that. I am not. I am not going to say that changing, allowing for other units is going to automatically solve the problem of affordability. In fact, I think we have a lot of work to do on that front. Our developers right now, unfortunately, don't have a lot of requirements. So there's nothing that precludes a lot of what Kirk pointed to with those new developments where all the units are $800,000 to purchase or $2,000 a month is a failure of policy in the city, and something that I really want us to revisit, because we used to have policies on the books that required, if you're going to develop a certain number of units, that you make sure a certain percentage of those units are affordable to folks who live and work in Sacramento. And that's not been the policy, not for the last 8 years. And so I don't view this in isolation as a solution. I view this as a part of the solution and a part of the conversation of a suite of policies that will eventually, hopefully, be in the final general plan and housing element for the city of Sacramento. But for me, this comes down to something very simple, and then I'll slow down because I know unfortunately, Boulevard Park asked me to be at their first meeting of the year like 3 months ago. So unfortunately, I have to leave at 7. I want to honor that commitment. But, I do want to say that to me, how I think about this is, if I were lucky enough to buy a house in Land Park today, which I would love to be able to do someday, but if I were lucky enough to be able to do that, there is nothing that would stop me from moving in 10 of my friends to live with me and their cars to say, hey, you come live with me, family members, come live with me, friends, and to create a situation that could potentially impact parking and traffic around the home. So I just, and I know that seems like a weird example, but I think in my mind, and I'm missing things, I would really love to hear that. You know, this is about developing a building that's exactly what could be built now, but with more than one unit in it. So right now, someone could decide to, you know, bulldoze their home and rebuild it in a different image. And so I don't think we're trying to change those standards that they'd be subject to right now. We're just saying that if you wanted to, you could make it a duplex, you could make it a triplex, you could make it a quadplex, you could subdivide it so more people could have access to that housing investment. But before I stop, and if I don't know if there's going to be time for any questions before I have to go, but I want to say that this is also not eliminating single family housing in Sacramento. It's not, you know, nothing in this is going to force you to subdivide your home. Nothing in this is going to force a new developer to subdivide their home. But my hope is, you know, if we have these additional requirements that I'm talking about around affordability, around accessibility, and have these other options, that it would, in limited cases, give people the opportunity to develop something that maybe is affordable to someone like me who's working a good, you know, advocacy job in downtown and really wants to live in a nice community. So I'll just stop there. And I know the planners are on here and they could probably go to the nth level of detail, but I just wanted to provide some broad framing on my thoughts. And I also, sorry, I've almost forgot, before I finish, one thing that I have said to a lot of folks, because I know there are some folks who are concerned about rentals. And I just want to say that there is a conversation that we need to have in the city about property management and about expectations for properties that are rentals that I think a lot of renters in the city would love to have. Because as someone right now who, you know, has had problems with rentals in the past that I could not get the property manager to address, that bugged me, that I'm sure bugged my neighbors. I think that we could talk a lot about how we ensure housing stays high quality and safe for everybody in the community. So I'll just end there and thank you again for giving me the space to talk.
Do you have time to take 2 questions?
I do. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. First of all, we appreciate that ultimate point of view and do want to engage on those changes to policies in future. My question is about gentrification and quadplexes. Quadplexes have not been allowed in several cities that have adopted, you know, a couple of cities have adopted this because they provide significant economic incentive to displace older housing stock, those few houses that are out there that are still, you know, under $500,000. Do you worry that rezoning traditional residential neighbors could lead to that gentrification? And would you agree to possibly eliminating the quadplex from the program?
I don't think I'm prepared to agree to that, although I'm open to the continued discussion. I do think that, so gentrification to me means a lot of things, right? And it means folks being displaced from their housing for a variety of reasons. And maybe it's somebody who has retired into their home and wants to cash out that value and go buy the beautiful house in Tahoe or wherever they're looking to settle down someday. And as much as that may, you know, make me sad, you know, when I was doing organizing in Oak Park, you know, when they were first starting to see the housing market shift over there, we lost a lot of neighbors because they wanted to cash out on the equity that was built in their home. And I couldn't blame them for that. They made an investment, they wanted to cash out. But the problem for me comes into when people feel like they need to sell because they can't keep their home, right? So if that homeowner decides that they want to stay, but maybe they can't keep up with maintenance or they can't make accessibility improvements, or maybe different things are happening that they're worried they can't keep up with. And so they feel like selling is their only option. That it becomes more problematic to me because then it's not a choice of that homeowner. You know, that's not that homeowner saying, yeah, I want to make this choice. It's them feeling like they have no choice. I understand the concern about market pressure. And again, I don't think this policy really adds or takes away from that. Because to be frank, that same person could sell their house today to someone who decides to bulldoze it and build it into a bigger house. You know, all that this is doing is saying it could be subdivided. So I understand that the market pressures are intense, but I think that comes from a bigger conversation about affordability, which I really want to have in the rest of the plan.
Okay, great. The last one's the last question we have in consideration of your time is just one of process and engagement. This is our opportunity to start establish a working relationship with you. And what we've always felt in general planning is, and the beauty of general planning is that it's an aggregate of 10 community plans that aggregate up into the general plan. It's not necessarily a top-down process. you know, where the general plan is given to us and saying, do you support this and how much do you support it? So do you agree with the concept that of keeping the community involved in the community planning process? And rather than just asking a yes or no question, actually allowing us to mark up the map with staff. And, you know, we're prepared to do that, and we can do that in a matter of just days, possibly weeks.
Absolutely. Well, you know, and my background as an organizer, I really value engagement. And I do have to commend, I think the city staff has done an excellent job with engagement in this general plan so far. I went to several of their workshops pre-COVID when in-person workshops were still a thing, and saw the maps and heard the questions and participated in that dialogue. And I think what we're seeing here is a mixture of the two, right? Where it's like, how do we honor where a community's at, where a community wants to go, and also recognize that sometimes there's citywide needs and there's citywide ideas that might need to be considered and brought into the equation. And I think they've done a really good job. And I'll be frank, you know, I've gotten several emails from folks who are opposed to this, and I think I've probably gotten about twice as many emails from folks saying they support it, you know. And so this is, I think the general thing of who the loudest, you know, how do we make decisions about this really has to be in the interest of what's in the best interest of the most people. And in my mind, you know, the people who we aren't hearing from, maybe who aren't filling out the surveys in Land Park, are the folks who don't live there. You know, they're the folks like me who live outside of Land Park who would love the opportunity to contribute to your amazing neighborhood, but maybe didn't take the survey because we're not there now, right? And so who are those voices that we don't hear from, and how do we balance the need for more housing, the need to create more access to housing with the community's needs and priorities? And I think in this case, the city staff has done a really great job of doing outreach. I know this is a hard conversation because it is a big change, and this is just the first of many, many steps that we'll take to finalize the general plan. But, you know, this is a process that I believe that has been done really, really well, and think the staff should be commended for what they've done so far on this and what they'll continue to do after the vote next week.
I'm sure they appreciate that, and we have a very good working relationship with staff. Where we're at now, though, is a political decision. You know, it's a council decision. The staff has made their recommendation. They've also stated in there a paragraph that says they're going to continue to work with communities on some adjustments. And the question what I guess is trying to state is, do you feel that every community needs to have absolutely the same solution, or can, in something where we're not sure on what the outcome is going to be, just how this is going to play out? We only have 2 cities that are experimenting with this now, and we're the first city in California that's going to experiment with this. So since we are experimenting with this, can East Sacramento have a proposal that they put forward that says, let's try this way? Can Greater Land Park say, we have areas that we want to actually enhance, that we feel it will enhance our neighborhood commercial centers if we build out around them. And it's a good proposal that makes sense. Can the communities come forth with the proposals that make sense for trial?
Absolutely. I think we're always very open to that. And for instance, like right now, the planning staff I know are working with Central City residents who've highlighted several specific historic buildings that have been a little swept up in some of these maps that we want to make sure stay protected, and that we want to make sure the land use designations are consistent with those historic buildings and making sure they stay preserved. You know, we don't want to lose those assets in our community. But I do think that it's, I need to understand, I guess, more of the policy reason why not. And I guess I understand the concern that somebody will sell their home to an investor who will just build as many units as they can to get as much money as they can. And I think for me, the way we address that is through those affordability requirements. It's through those developer requirements, because it shouldn't just be a free-for-all, sell it for as high as you can make it type property situation, which feels like what we have downtown when you've got 500 square foot apartments leasing for $2,000 a month, which is the new. It's no longer 700 square feet, even 500 square feet apartments are leasing for that much money right now. That's not okay. That's off balance. You know, we need to make sure it's checked. So how do we check some of that profit motive? So maybe it will slow that down, right? And make sure that it's reasonable. And if it is happening, it's something that actually is attainable to folks who live and work in the community and want to make this place their permanent home. But, you know, I guess I'm trying to understand though, I guess that's part of what I'm asking from you all is to help me understand. I've heard the traffic concerns and the parking concerns, and I understand we need to be a lot more thoughtful. I know there's longstanding issues in Land Park with a lot of your corridors. There's different pockets of challenges that, you know, we're working with staff to try to think of a game plan on. But, you know, otherwise functionally, like I said, you know, nothing would stop a single family homeowner from doing that today. So that's part of my, my own kind of question back, I guess, to you all.
Okay.
Great. Well, then we'll continue the conversation.
Jennifer Holden, can you present your concerns to Katie real quick?
I can. I'll do my best. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Jennifer.
Excellent.
Hi,
The
Jen.
microphone's on. Hello, Katie. Good to see you this evening. And I just heard you say that you wanted us to help you understand our concerns. And I think I can do that. I have a couple of questions prepared. I prepared them for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons it's in the mix is to try to help you understand what taking the surveys might have been like. And at the same time, I can also highlight some of the concerns. So I'm going to skip the first question because I think you already kind of have answered that one all on your own. I'm just going to summarize it by saying I understand that a lot of the work on the community input focused around social justice and housing equity. And I very much support that. I am all for that. I'm glad you're for that. And I am so proud to see that my city is all for that. We need that. This is good. And I think that the topic we're on is very much at the heart of that. So just summarizing question number one and going past that one. The next question that I have that might help you understand some of the concerns is that I've lived in Sacramento most of my life, definitely in my adult life. And Sacramento has a world famous tree canopy that is an essential feature of our city. And that is the reason for the city's requirement for homeowners to replace any trees in their front yard they cut down. We must maintain the tree canopy because it reduces air pollution, shades our houses, and reduces our dependency on energy-heavy air conditioning. That is why downtown has the hottest ambient temperature than anywhere else in the city. The lack of open soil and lack of trees taller than the building forces the area to be dependent on air conditioning, and in turn, air conditioning dumps more heat back into the atmosphere. I've also heard that California's demand for electricity already exceeds its ability to manufacture electricity, forcing electrical companies to buy electricity from other states. So given these facts and information, there are two options, and I'm asking which one you support more. A, reducing Sacramento's dependency on electricity and air conditioning by insisting upon maintaining our tree canopy through supporting low density housing, or B, increasing Sacramento's dependency on electricity and air conditioning by supporting high density housing that will damage Sacramento's tree canopy and insisting that Sacramentans buy expensive electricity for air conditioners that will further raise our summer ambient temperatures even higher.
Thanks for that question, Jennifer. I'm a little bit of an energy policy wonk myself, so don't get me too started on the energy demand stuff because I could be here all night talking about the ISO. I could really get into the wonky weeds here. But no, I think the general question is whether or not this policy change would make it more likely that homes would be redeveloped in a way that would remove the trees. And I understand, because I've seen this happen in Southside Park and a few other parts of the district, where someone comes in to rebuild a single family home, tears down all the trees, and we're like, well, what's the point of having a tree ordinance if someone just comes in and bulldozes all the trees when they redevelop a house, right? So I think that's a question, a very distinct policy issue that exists right now. And I think right now, without making this change, someone could come in and buy a single family home from somebody else and decide that they want to redevelop it and tear down those trees, just like they might do under this ordinance, right? So the real question is, how do we make that tree ordinance more enforceable? How do we make sure that there are other techniques and methods and monitoring and enforcement so that people don't just come bulldoze the trees when they want to build something new? And they're trying to find a way to work around it. I'll never forget touring this amazing home in East Sacramento. I'll never remember where it is off the top of my head right now, where they basically built their deck around this really old historic tree, and the home kind of curved around it. And I was like, this is the coolest house I've ever seen, not just because of the design, but because they kept the old historic tree and they found a way to work around it. And so that's really the key question here. And this policy, not passing it or passing it, isn't going to address the fact that people are tearing down their trees. I think right now the goal is that we're keeping it to the standards it's in now. Someone might retrofit a current building, so it doesn't even necessarily mean demo, right? Someone could decide, I'm going to buy a house, or the house I own now, I'm going to split it and rent out the other house, or sell the other side of the house so that we can make more income. There's a lot of ways this could happen, but I think you're naming an issue that is really important that I'd like to see us consider moving forward in our policies.
Excellent. Do you have time for another one?
Yes, we can squeeze out one more, I think, and then I got to go to Boulevard Park, but go ahead.
I'll make this one the shorter of the ones remaining. Given that increasing population density is inevitable and aging sewer and water systems are going to have an increasing load placed upon them, which do you support more? Increasing taxes as little as possible to leave the existing aging infrastructure in place and build holding vaults under our residential roads to handle any excess sewer loads at high demand times, and accept that there will be an increasing amount of sewer backups and low flow water associated with not sufficiently updating older systems? Or B, increasing taxes as much as is needed to rebuild our existing residential sewer and water systems with new systems that can handle the increasing load sufficiently to avoid low flow water and backflow sewer problems?
I think I'm going to make an answer C just to challenge you, Jennifer, if that's okay. And so, like, for instance, there's a large sewer line upgrade happening on 3rd Street right now because our infrastructure in some places is real old and it's causing a lot of problems for folks. And so we do need to think about how do we maintain that. Part of when I talk about developer requirements and are we charging the right amount of money to ensure we have what we need to compensate for that growth and that need for the infrastructure to be improved. And so it's a little bit of both. You know, we can't get around the fact that in the end, we need a functional sewer system and we're going to have to figure out how to maintain that. And I just got put on to the sanitation district and a few other boards. So I'm going to be learning probably more about that than I ever knew before. But, you know, I do think it comes back to that question, right? You know, who holds the obligation to ensure that we have enough resources to deal with growth and change? And in my mind, I think those are the folks who are coming in to do the development. Not entirely, right? You know, you can't make them responsible for all the sewer lines in all the neighborhood. But if you're coming in to do a big project like the rail yard, they're the ones paying for the 3rd Street sewer improvement because they need that sewer line. And it's in a large part paid for by them. I do see Mitch shaking his head. There is, like, that's what I've been told. If I'm wrong, I would love to hear it because I believe that should have been the developer who paid for that in full. So it helps everybody, but that's my own 2 cents.
No, and thank you, Katie. We know you need to go, and I want to thank you for your time. I was shaking my head because it's a lot easier for infrastructure to be done on raw land than to tear up an existing neighborhood such as Land Park. And further, again, we're not focusing on Land Park, we're focusing on the whole city. So I wish you would not pick on Land Park in particular in this particular conversation. We really feel that—
Oh, that's not my intent, Mitch. I'm sorry if that was the intent. I was just speaking to you all since this is your meeting, but I definitely know this is not a Land Park.
There's a wide audience of many neighborhood community associations on the call tonight from all over the city who share our concerns. And frankly, it's maybe the less affordable neighborhoods that a developer could come in and raise several buildings, maybe next to each other, and you could end up with 4 or 5 or 10 of these fourplexes and really decimate a neighborhood. But we'll leave it there. And again, we appreciate your time, and I know we'll have a chance to discuss this more.
Absolutely. And I want to note that my very competent Chief of Staff, Michelle Parasette, is going to stay on the call. She's here now, and the staff, obviously, who are sticking around to continue the discussion. But thanks for having me, and really appreciate you all making the space tonight for us to chat a little bit. Thank you.
Yes, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I guess we have Matt Hertel next, who could tell us a little bit about the city's long-range planning.
Yes, let's see. Matt, are you with us, or is Greg going to speak tonight?
I am here, yeah.
Oh,
Hi,
great.
Kurt.
I don't see you. I only have a view of 4 people.
Fair enough. Well, if I keep
good to
speaking,
see
maybe I'll get elevated to the video screen where you can see me, but hopefully everyone else can see me and hear me just fine.
Do you have anything you want to share in the way of a screen, or are we just
No,
talking?
we'll just have a conversation.
Great.
And I know you have a number of questions and we can just have a good dialogue, but I just wanted to thank you for inviting planning staff to your meeting this evening, and excited to be here. I'm Matt Hertel. I'm the acting long-range planning manager. So what that means is our team oversees all the long-range planning documents for the city, our neighborhood planning, our general plan, our climate action plan, housing element, and a lot of our policy changes. I've also invited a few colleagues that will be available to answer some of your questions. We have, I believe, our urban design manager here, our manager of project manager for the general plan, Remy Mendoza, is here. As you mentioned, our acting planning director is also in attendance. So lots of folks to answer questions. So we've had the opportunity to work closely with Kirk, LPCA, and other neighborhood associations throughout this process of the general plan. I also want to mention that Kirk is a recent graduate of the city's planning academy. So we've had a lot of great positive interactions. Really appreciate all the time and energy many of you have given to updating the city's 20-year planning document. We're 2 years into a 3-year process. We've heard from 3,000 different individuals. So I really appreciate that. It's clear that you care about your community and the future of Sacramento. So the general plan and climate action and adaptation plan updates were initiated in February 2019. So we're just about 2 years here. And the project consists of 4 main phases of work. And so to wrap up this phase 2, the options exploration, on January 19th, we'll be going to City Council to consider the draft land use map, proposed roadway changes, and other key strategies. These key strategies represent substantial policy changes being considered for the 2040 general plan. And as we're talking about today, but there's multiple key strategies, 10 or so, including the land use map and proposed roadway changes. But one of those proposed key strategies is to permit a great array of housing types, such as duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, in existing residential neighborhoods. I do want to note that the staff report will be posted to the city's website by Friday morning, sometimes as early as Thursday evening. The staff report will also include a frequently asked questions document all about this topic, because I know it's a big topic. There's lots of things to explore here. And the frequently asked questions will also be on our website. We'll be sending out an email distribution to probably many of you. We have a very large email distribution list for our project. So you will all get that tomorrow. There'll be a link directly to the FAQ, as well as how you can find the staff report. You can easily navigate that. So after the meeting on the 19th, we really begin the work of phase 3, which is the draft plan preparation. So actually writing the individual documents. Those key strategies will be used to guide the detailed preparation of the general plan, the climate action, and we'll begin the master environmental impact report, where evaluating the impacts of this project on the environment through CEQA. We anticipate that these documents will be available for public review in the summer of 2021, and will include all the proposed key strategies, but will be organized by goals and policies and implementation programs. And then council will be asked to adopt a general plan at the end of 2021. And then in terms of next steps and how does this actually get actualized, and what we're talking about today, because I think there's some confusion about what is being asked and what's next steps. Well, once the general plan is adopted by City Council, in a year or so, the city's planning and development code, or the zoning code, will then need to be updated in 2022 to be consistent with the adopted 2040 land use map and key strategies. And one of those anticipated changes would be to allow these housing types that we're talking about. And once the zoning code would be adopted by City Council, then folks can move forward with doing these types of housing products. So I just wanted to lay out some of those next steps, but certainly invite all of you to view and attend the city council meeting next Tuesday, you're welcome to provide e-comments. You can obviously call in, but there's a lot of information in the staff report about where we came from, how we got here, why staff is recommending these key strategies. So I encourage you all to look at that. And of course, the frequently asked questions. Included in the frequently asked questions is photos of what these product types look like in our city today. In our city, we actually have over 2,300 duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes already within our residential neighborhoods. And we have some photos of what those look like and what that means. So anyway, with that, I'll just throw it back to Kirk and we can take any questions you may have.
Kirk, and we have time for about 8 to 10 minutes for questions for Matt.
Great.
Okay, Matt.
May I ask that we're experiencing some bandwidth problems. So maybe for those people that would consider turning off their video, that would just help, and we'll continue the conversation. I'd like, Matt and Greg and Bruce, anyone who's going to answer a question, to leave their video on, but maybe the rest that are in observation for the moment could turn their video off. Okay, so let's just zip through a couple of questions if we can. Is that all right, Matt?
Let's do it.
Great, okay.
Oh, I think I lost you for a minute. Kirk, I can turn off my video if that's gonna help.
I think it's maybe on Kirk's end, Matt. I know one of the first questions he wanted to ask is just about, one of the questions that really came up from the community that was pretty common was about infrastructure. And you kind of addressed that a little bit, but how will we plan and, long-term to make sure that we have the proper infrastructure, that parking is addressed and all that?
Sure.
Will impact us as much.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. I think I'll start off with just talking about the 5 kind of pieces to land use and what dictates what can be built where, and then we can talk about infrastructure, and Kirk talked about that a little bit, right? So your foundational pieces that we're talking about in the general plan is your land use designations, right? So the colors on the map, essentially what can you do in that parcel of land generally in a broad strokes. Then you've got the intensity of that use. So the floor area ratio is what we're talking about. So how much of that land use can you put on that parcel, or how many units within there? Then we've got, our zoning, right? So our planning and development code, so more specifically about the uses, it drills down into that. So, right. So you've got, for example, in most neighborhoods, right, we've got a neighborhood land use designation of some sort. And then the zoning would be R1 or R2 or R2A, right? So that would dictate more specifically what could be built there. Then you have your development standards, which were in your planning and development code. So that talks about some of the things we're asking about. So it has height restrictions. For example, in all R1 zones, you can't exceed 35 feet. It talks about how much of your actual parcel you can cover with a structure. So in R1, you can't cover more than 40% of your actual parcel with a structure. You have to be 20 feet from the street. So, that setback thing where front yards or landscaping could be. You have to be, 5 feet from your neighbor's house, those types of things. So those are still in place and still have to be followed. And of course, we still have our citywide design guidelines that would have to be followed. In terms of parking requirements, also in our planning and development code. So right now in R1 zone, you have to have at least 1 off-street parking space per unit. So that means if you were to have a duplex, you'd have to have 2 off-street parking spaces. Triplex, you'd have to have 3, and so on. So those are existing parking requirements. In terms of infrastructure citywide, yeah, certainly. So, each location is different, each development is different. We do evaluation of the impact on these larger developments that come through in our site plan and design review, working with Public Works, of what kind of infrastructure is under the ground there now and what would need to be upgraded, if any. And we go through all those studies and figure that out and make appropriate adjustments. We do know in some of our infill areas that, need some upgrades. We're working with the state, working with SACOG and others on a number of programs to identify additional funding for infill. And then we have, so there's a number of ways of addressing that. But I'll stop.
Can I jump in
course,
here really quick?
please.
This is Greg Sandlin, planning director with the city. New development pays for its infrastructure. So we do an assessment on whether it's impacting adversely sewer and water lines. And if it is, and they need to upsize that sewer line, they have to pay for it. 100%. The city doesn't put a dime into that. We cannot, by state law, use ratepayer money to pay for infrastructure. That's illegal. You can't pay for growth-inducing infrastructure with ratepayer money. So financing infrastructure is quite a challenge with development, and it has made development more expensive, which makes housing more expensive because those developments have to pay their way. Had another thing also with the combined sewer system in certain parts of the city. Our utilities department has already determined that no further water drainage can go into the combined sewer system. So in those areas, like in East Sacramento and Land Park, if you do, let's say, a triplex, and you're creating any more impermeable surface where additional water will run off that would have otherwise been going into the ground, you have to create on-site detention. So I just want to clarify, the community would not be paying for this development, the infrastructure costs of that.
Thank you, Greg. I have a follow-up question that came from Barry. He says that when you're talking about the FAR, that it actually allows for much more development on the property and much higher development without parking and limited open space. Is that? Can you talk to that, or maybe reiterate what you've already said?
Well, the floor area ratio that we're looking at with the general plan establishes what your maximum amount of building square footage you can build in relation to your lot size. So if you have a 5,000 square foot lot under our general plan, you would be able to build a maximum key word there, of 5,000 square feet of building. As Matt had mentioned, we have height restrictions. We also have bulk and massing restrictions. You might have heard of the tent ordinance developed in East Sacramento when people were building McMansions, as they were calling them. They wanted more house in this nice area, and so they were building straight up, 2 stories, straight up. In fact, I was riding around with my kids in Land Park this Sunday, and I saw a house that definitely was built before we made that bulk and massing requirement. It dwarfs the homes right next to it. We now require basically that when something is proposed, that there's basically an invisible tent over, oh, if you can imagine this, over the property, and we don't allow, essentially as a principle, projections outside of that. So we're trying to control the massing and the size of buildings. And I can tell you, as we update our planning and development code to accommodate these missing middle housing types, we're going to have quite a lot of work and design and requirements changes to our planning and development code, aka zoning code, that will be community informed for what these types of missing middle housing types will look like. The general plan establishes the policy and the FARs and whatnot, the land use policies to allow these missing middle housing types, but we still, as Matt has indicated, have a lot more work with the actual zoning requirements and development standards and design guidelines for these housing types.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that follow-up. Another common theme that came up was, and it kind of goes back to what Jennifer was talking about earlier with, well, you think about the trees and wildlife, that those open spaces. I think that some of the concern has been is that this will take out more of the open spacings that we have, and that I think one of the new designations is now the Old City Cemetery is considered an open space, even though it's really not necessarily an accessible place for families, etc. Can you talk to that about how that will be addressed, or maybe open spaces, how they'll be preserved?
Matt, do you want to take it?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, and feel free to fill in. But yes, the staff report going to City Council on the 19th, as I mentioned, has a number of key strategies. And actually, one of the key strategies is to increase the amount of tree canopy cover in the city, and prioritizing investments in areas of the greatest urban heat island effects, areas of poor air quality, and areas of populations most vulnerable to the effects of increased extreme heat. So we're very much focused on that. In addition, the city is in the final stages of its urban forest master plan. A lot of strategies in regulatory framework within that to protect our existing tree canopy and get more trees. We also, through our community plan area workshop and working with Parks is engaging in the Parks master plan. So really looking at access to open space. And then our community plan area workshops, you'll know there was an exercise about that very thing, and really trying to ensure that most of our residents have access within 10-minute walk to a park or open space or greenway. So those are very much on the forefront of the city's mind in terms of how we provide access to additional trees and open space.
Excellent. Thank you both for that. So as we're kind of coming to the end of your guys' time, and so, I know that we haven't nearly addressed all the questions that are coming up from our community. So what are the opportunities now for our community to give input, for all communities to give input to the plan and the next steps, knowing that the vote is coming next week, but there's still processes following that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, the next step would be to participate in city council meeting. And we are working on those draft documents, and we're going to have those available for public review, robust public review during the summertime. So we'll have other mechanisms, and maybe we'll be able to meet in person at some point soon, but we'll make sure that we have lots of ways for people to get involved, and you'll actually be able to review and read the specific policy language and comment on that. There also, of course, will be the environmental impact report you'll be able to read and comment on. So yeah, lots of opportunities there, and even after the general plan, of course, through the hearings and all that process for actual adoption, and then the zoning code process as well. So yeah, lots more to come.
Maybe I can add hi everyone, this is Remy Mendoza. Yeah, I would encourage everyone to please sign up on our website, which I've placed the link on the chat at www.sac2040gpu.org for the email blast announcements. You can be aware of any future planning commission meetings, city council meetings, or other workshops that will be coming up in the future.
All right. Well, Matt, Remy, Greg, thank you so much for being with us tonight, for sharing your expertise and information. And I know our community's interested and invested, and you'll be hearing from the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay. At this time, I want to bring on and welcome Jennifer Holden, who introduced herself earlier as the president of the Mangan Park Neighborhood Association. And Jennifer is going to talk a little bit about community engagement and some of possible next steps that from the various communities heard about the zoning. So Jennifer, I'll go ahead and bring you on now. I'll go ahead and jump in.
Hello, everyone. Good to sort of see you again. You heard Katie touch on it just briefly. This is the non-planner side of the process. This is the human side of the process, where the city organized many different events over last summer and this fall to try to ask the community for their, the community being the greater, everywhere within the city limits, try to provide them with a chance to tell the city what kind of city they wanted to live in. And it's my understanding that that's a common part of any master plan development. Every 5 to 10 years, the city does this. And reading through the material, well, let me back up. Let me tell you first up where you can find the material if you're interested. You're going to have to write this down. There's no really good way to show you. You go to the archived meetings on the city council website, and you go to December 1st, 2020. And once you're in the agenda for December 1st, 2020, you select item 18, which is the 2040 general plan update. And you scroll, well, it's a 100-page document that'll pop up. Most of my study in the matter so far is focused on page 32 to 49, but there are other pages that reflect the city's efforts to do outreach and gather information from all its communities. And I really commend the city for the great lengths they went to reach neighborhoods that don't normally engage in city activities. Neighborhoods like Land Park, you can tell, Land Park's engaged in civic matters. There are some other neighborhoods in town that are very well known for having very strong civic engagement. But there are some other great neighborhoods in town that aren't known for their civic participation. They're very much together with themselves, but communicating with the city isn't a forte. The city really made an effort to get into those communities and to ask those communities what sort of city they wanted to live in. So there's a commendation there for the city. Thank you so much for doing all of that hard work. There was a very wide range of methods that they used to do community outreach everywhere across. I'm not going to go into a lot of details. It's been an information dense meeting already. So I encourage all of you to go and read about the studies that they did. They sent out postcards and had people answer online. They had, before the COVID-19 shut down, they had in-person workshops where people could go and attend and gather information and fill out surveys. They had virtual workshops where people filled out materials online, and it went on for many, many months. Please take a look at it, everybody. And it's really information dense. You have to read carefully. I would love to start up a discussion just on that. It's not going to happen tonight, and it's not going to happen in 10 minutes. Where I'm kind of thinking, and where you can hear in my earlier questions, is that much of the city's work focused on social justice and housing equity, which you understand is something I'm really big on, and I'm very proud of the city for presenting that information and pulling together around that. That's a very valuable thing for us to do. But I'm also concerned that perhaps people weren't given a chance to understand the complete ramifications of everything that increasing our density, however we choose to do it, is going to have. And so I'm going to continue studying and reading through that. I'm happy to talk to other people and see what you think, and kind of try to find our way through this and what the information means. Does anybody have any questions for me on that right now?
And why don't you guys go ahead and put them in the chat, and Jen, then I'll call them out to you.
Okay.
And I don't see anything coming in. Kirk was asking if he could circle back to some staff questions if we still have staff here. We still have about 20 minutes left in our meeting time.
Okay, well, if there aren't
yeah, is Remy still with us, or Matt, or Greg? They look like they're muted or possibly gone. If they're not here, then I think we can open up questions from the questions.
I see Matt and I see Remy.
You do see Matt.
And I see Remy. They're both here.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I don't have their pictures. Yes, so would you unmute Matt and Remy?
Go ahead and ask your question, Kirk.
Yeah, we're here.
Oh, great, great. Okay, sorry, I lost sound for a large part of that. So let me ask you about the follow-on zoning. We've had a number of questions that asked how much change do you anticipate to residential zoning, setbacks or heights or area of lot use when we get into making the changes to bring them in alignment to these new housing types?
Hi, everyone. This is Remy Mendoza. Once we receive council direction to proceed with this policy, we would undergo a separate initiative where we would look closely at what zoning changes would need to be made in order to implement the policy. And so there would be additional outreach and additional studies, and our staff and our consultants would look at that closely. But when you're working with the general plan, you're looking at the city through a bird's eye view at the 3,000 foot level without getting necessarily into the weeds of all the specific parcel level of details. And so we're looking, kind of with a broader brush and confirming with our community and with our elected officials that this is indeed the direction we want to go. Once we've completed having that conversation, we completed our master AR analysis, and we have council direction to move forward with that, then we would look at those details closely. But the overall intent is that we would make the minor zoning adjustments in order to ensure that the policy can be implemented.
Thank you, Remy.
Yeah, and maybe I would just add that today, you can currently build, as you're well aware, an accessory dwelling unit or two. And so those are already allowed by right. And so we're really just looking at a minor bump to, also allow up to a fourplex as well.
Yeah, thank you. And does zoning get rewritten every 5 years with the general plan, or is it on a different schedule?
The zoning has to be consistent with the general plan by law. So as any changes are made to the general plan land use designations, then zoning changes have to be made afterwards as well.
And I'll just also note that, our planning and development code is updated every year. So we bring up what we call a bundle to the city every year to make little minor tweaks and changes and updates to reflect, where our city is at the time. So it's an ever evolving document, but yes, a comprehensive update to make sure that it's consistent per state law, a general plan or land use map and the strategies.
Great, that's helpful. The last element that you mentioned, Matt, was design standards, whether it's for ADUs or for these missing middle housing units. Are design standards already in place for these new housing varieties that might be introduced? And how often do those get reevaluated or updated so that as we start to experience them, we have an ability to give input on how we'd like privacy or lighting or whatever? How does that happen?
Matt, you want me to jump in there?
Oh, sure, Bruce. Hey, how you doing? Hey, and Kirk, I think Greg is bumped out or left, and he's back in. So if you just let him in, he'll join us as well.
Yeah.
Great, Bruce.
I've been listening through here, and I want to first kind of touch on something before we go to how often these standards are updated. And I will, on a single family lot, and it's zoned as a single family lot, if that lot in the future is allowed to have more units in it, it's still the same size building, because right now we have standards that say in a single family lot, you'll have side and rear yard and front yard setbacks. So if you look at a site plan, that tells you how big the footprint can be, right? And it really doesn't matter whether it's 3 units or 4 units or 1 unit, it's still that maximum size. And then we have a requirement for how tall that building can be, and it's 35 feet high. And we have a requirement that says you can't use more than 40% of the site for this structure. So we're really talking about stopping counting number of units and looking at what's the overall form of the site. But if you were to look at a 3-unit home on a site and a 1-unit home on the site, they're both essentially can be the same size. So it's not like we're going to go build big apartment buildings in a single family site, because it's still going to be restricted to maximum lot coverage setbacks and maximum height and bulk control. So if something's close to a property line, it's, limited on how big it can be. Now, the reason I wanted to say that is because that's all part of our design standards. And we have citywide standards for single family homes and duplexes, for multifamily, for industrial and commercial. Those hadn't been updated for 15 years or more. And we just updated them last year, went through a rather robust public process to update those. Then we also have guidelines for Central City. We have special design districts that have standards also. We have historic districts that have standards. And so they go through an evolutionary process as time changes and need changes. We're recently did citywide standards, and a few years back we did Central City design standards. So I'm not anticipating that we have it on our agenda to change those standards right away, but one of the things that we note is as we're doing processing development projects, words have a funny way of not anticipating everything that can happen out there. And we will get projects that creates a challenge to say, does this fit, does this not fit? That's one of the reasons we have deviations. But we regularly go through modifications to our codes based on language that is not functional or a problem has developed that wasn't anticipated. When we do that, that is typically a public process, either a bundle change, changing a whole bunch of unrelated things, or a massive change of let's go back and look at citywide design standards. So I would anticipate that based on what the 2040 general plan gives us and what we want to do in certain districts, we're going to have to go back and look and see whether or not there needs to be any modifications to design standards to continue to provide protection, because our design standards talk about, balconies and stairs, adjacent to other neighbors, because privacy of a larger project is really important as we look at neighbors. So we do all of that now. And I don't know that I've heard anything either in the written agenda that you put out or what I've heard today that we don't already look at. While there is a change in how we want to count how many people are in an area, it really isn't going to change the development format or the development mass or the development opportunity. When we were developing the historic design guidelines, one of the things that we said is not every district and not every lot has the same development potential. We have to look at, what those neighborhoods are giving us. And there was an important lesson learned there. And while we used to have only a few districts with design review. Prior to 2013, we had, I think, 12 design review districts. And if you weren't in one of those, like Land Park, there was no design review. You could build whatever you wanted. When we went to citywide design review, we started looking at everything in the city. That way, East Sacramento was not treated differently than North Sacramento, which was not treated differently than Land Park. So there is a uniformity in the way we look at things relative to development cost, development opportunity, and impact on neighborhood and neighbors. So that's a long explanation, but hopefully that helps.
Thank you. I want to jump in before we move into another question. This time of the evening was meant for community discussion and questions, and we have folks who've been waiting with their hand raised. So I'm going to jump in and let them ask questions of the city or Kirk, whoever they're asking. So we're going to start with August. And August, can you let us know who you're asking the question to so the appropriate person can respond?
I'm asking the city. So I guess, yeah, the city specifically. I'm a RPNA board member. I'm the outgoing president of RPNA, which is River Park Neighborhood Association. And I was invited to this meeting by Maggie Coulter, who has been, featured in the SACB and has been very lobbying our neighborhood to take a stance on this issue. I personally don't understand all the moving parts going on. So I explained to her that our RPNA board is considering it and we will get back to her. That said, a lot of my constituents are very concerned that there would be fourplexes built in River Park, and they're concerned about both the traffic impacts and I guess probably the sewage impacts as well. My question specifically is, besides the city ordinances, are there any legal mechanisms that would allow for citizens to oppose a project in the neighborhood, like CEQA, or like to delay or at least shape and mitigate a project?
Hey, August. Yeah, thank you for your question. Appreciate it. Been out to the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association twice now, and I've spoken with Maggie, so I'm glad that you were able to make tonight. Yeah, I mean, in terms of shaping the process, this is a 3-year planning process. And like I said, we've heard from over 3,000 individual folks. So absolutely shaping the plan. And there's going to be way more over the next year. And, you know, your voice certainly can be heard throughout that process, but at City Council, Planning and Design Commission and the like. In terms of the end of the day, yeah, we also have to do a master EIR to evaluate what the impacts of these policies would have on the environment. And we have to go through that process. It's typically a 10-month process, very extensive, detailed. We do detailed traffic modeling. We look at all the various aspects of the environment, and we have to go through that process. So yes, folks could challenge the adequacy of the environmental document. That is a process. You can do a secret challenge on the project.
Oh, I meant, sorry, I didn't mean on the master plan. I meant on specific projects. Like, let's say that a developer came to a park and went on Madison and bought 6 houses, raised all 6 houses, and wanted to build like a 3-story or 2-story apartment complex. Would there be any accountability to that developer in that hypothetical scenario, or is it once they buy the land, it's theirs to do whatever they want to?
Yeah, I think it's a 2-part process, and then I'll let Bruce go into details. But essentially, those 5 pieces that I talked about before, your land use designation, the FAR, the intensity, the zoning, the development standards, the height and setbacks, all those kinds of things. If you are consistent with all those things, it'll be typically a staff level review to make sure you're consistent with those things for like an individual home, for example, like a single family home, to make sure you're consistent with that, and you go through. And so there wouldn't be a large public hearing process. If you look for a deviation, if you're changing something, if you're trying to do something different outside of those standards, not consistent with those standards, then it could be a director level hearing, in some cases, Planning and Design Commission. So I don't know, Bruce, if you want to fill in more details, but.
Yeah, and this is Bruce Montague. Let me kind of go back and talk to your concern. Someone buying multiple lots and building multifamily project, it's a single family zone. They can't do that.
It's not a single family zone. River Park actually has duplexes in every corner, and we also have 4 separate apartment complex zoned in our neighborhood. So I was just wondering, and hypothetically, if these single family home lots were then altered, is there any accountability to the developer, or is it like a laissez-faire, like the developer gets to do whatever they want once the ordinance passes?
All right. Well, I would suggest that maybe you're misinterpreting this. Let me give you an option. If there was a big single family home and there were 5 people living in that home, and it was a certain size, and someone developed a 4-plex of exactly the same size, and it had some dividing walls, and there were 4 or 5 people that lived in that complex, it's the same size home and it's the same number of people. It's just that now unassociated people can live in that particular home, because we differentiate multifamily zones and apartment buildings from things that are in the single family zone. So a duplex can be built on a corner in a single family zone. And quite frankly, that duplex can then have, right now, can have accessory dwelling units up to 1,200 square feet. So the intent here is not to allow the intrusion or the land acclimation to build large apartment buildings. If you look at downtown in the 1960s, there were individual lots that are 40 by 160 that individual homes were taken down and apartment buildings, 6, 8, 10 units were built. That's not the discussion, and that's not the intent. The intent is to start, controlling not the number of units necessarily, but the overall size of the units through FAR.
Right, and I understand that.
Guys, I don't mean to. I'm going to interrupt now because we have other people that have questions. So August, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I was just curious. I just wanted to get that question out there, and I'm sure we'll discussion with the city in more detail in the future.
And August, feel free to reach out to me directly if you like, if you want to chat a little bit about further.
Sure.
We have time for one more question. It's about 7:41, and Jen was next with her hand up. Jen Henderson. Thank you, August.
Hi, so Jen Henderson here. I'm a resident of Land Park, and this is to Michelle, and it's more of a comment. And I just wanted to say that I have some experience in this, but not on the decide where you are on government, but we recently purchased a multifamily home here in Land Park, and our landlords, because anyway, that is something we were interested in doing. And when this came up, I started looking at this, and I want to make the point that in Land Park, I don't think this is going to happen much in Land Park. It doesn't pencil out. We've done the numbers ourselves. And so if the intent was to try and integrate the neighborhoods, it's likely going to affect the lower income neighborhoods. That's where this is mainly going to be, this redevelopment will be cost effective. And so this is sort of a regressive plan where we're going to be pushing high development out, and then they're going to be commuting in, and we're not really going to be diversifying our neighborhoods and bringing people in. And I wanted to point that out as someone who's been looking at the numbers and as an investor that in like Land Park and East Sac, I don't see the turnover, because the rents don't justify the turnover on the R1 type of areas and how many units you can put in it. So that was just my comment.
Thanks, Jed. This is Remy Mendoza. I just want to respond to one of the common questions I've seen come up in the chat by a few folks, and just confirm that this is a citywide approach. And then in terms of the anticipated growth, over 92% of our growth is planned to be accommodated along our commercial corridors and near our light rail stations, and only a much smaller number is anticipated within the existing neighborhoods, about 7 or 8%. So our general plan over the next 20 years does assume that the bulk of the growth is on vacant, underutilized sites, large infill sites, commercial corridors, near light rail stations. But there is still an opportunity for some of the existing neighborhoods to accommodate a smaller percentage of that growth.
Thank you, Remy. We have time for one more question. JBPOW, what's next?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Holden mentioned social justice and housing equity. One of my primary issues in Sacramento is the homeless problem. And one of the solutions, or part of the solution to the homeless problem, is low-income housing. I don't understand why, because if you build a duplex, triplex, or fourplex in Land Park or East Sacramento, you can't put a low-income or middle-income person in there. It's going to be a high-income person, especially maybe somebody moving from the Bay Area. It's not solving the problem. At the same time, there's a 2,900 residential unit development opening in Natomas called the Greenbrier, and a 3,900 residential unit development opening in the south part of the city called Delta Shores. And there's a lot of stock there for these people to come and live. And at the same time, in a community like Oak Park, where they're going to be subject to the development in Aggie Square and the thousands of jobs that the mayor has promised, who's going to buy, if this rezoning goes through, who's going to buy those units? It's not going to be low and middle income people. It's going to be upper middle income people, and the low income people are going to be forced out. So I don't understand. There's a lot of technical language here about zoning. I don't understand how any of this addresses the real problems that we have in Sacramento. And I'd like to hear from some people who work for the city to address that.
Sure, I can address your question. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. You know, we have a housing shortage and housing crisis in the city of Sacramento and throughout California. So we, every 8 years from the state, we get our allotment of the number of units we have to accommodate in an 8-year period. So for 21 to 29, we have to accommodate, plan for, identify sites for over 45,000 housing units. 17,000 of those housing units have to be affordable to our lower income households. So you're right. This particular strategy is really focused on kind of missing middle workforce housing, but you got to remember, this is one tiny little piece of the pie. So we're really focused on this one little strategy, but there's a lot that the cities are doing. I would encourage you all to participate in our housing strategy update, our housing element. It's required by the state. We have to have it approved this summer. We've been going through that process. It'll be out for public review in a couple of weeks. And it identifies 45 different strategies and programs for addressing our housing need, really focused on affordable housing and housing for lowest income residents, because there is a giant need. And of course, you've probably been following the discussion that the mayor and council have been having around the master siting plan to really look at additional emergency shelter options for our unhoused population. So city's very focused on those questions and issues. So I appreciate that question.
Hertel, I would suggest to you that you are threatening the integrity of these beautiful existing neighborhoods without addressing the real problem. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. First of all, I just want to just say that we know that not everybody's questions were answered. There was lots of questions that came through the chat. We had a limited amount of time, but we wanted just to give you kind of the highlights and make sure that you had a better understanding of the situation, the city's point of view and information, and also just the city all of you that represented the city had a really good chance to hear from the community. So thank you, everybody. And I really want to take the time to thank Remy and Greg and Matt and Bruce for spending time with us and sharing your expertise. And I would invite our community to stay involved. There's a city council meeting next week. There's other processes that we'll be sharing through the Land Park Community Association website. So thanks, everybody. And also, I want to just kind of give a shout out for Land Park, or for LPCA. We have not had any opportunities this last year to really raise money, and our membership has not been growing. So if you are not a member, I would invite you to visit our website and join us. We need your dues to continue the work of advocating for our community. This is a voluntary board. We all take time out of the rest of our lives to do the work because the community is important to us. So now is the time to join and to be involved because we have about 5 people doing all the work of 8,300 residents. So please join us, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so glad I could be here with everyone this evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Marty. Thanks, Kurt.
Good night.
Great questions. Thank you, Bruce. I'm sorry I lost sound for most of that meeting. So, but I could tell the engagement. I appreciate it.
All right. Good night, you guys. We'll touch base soon. I'm going to end the meeting and
Good night.
Good night. Good
Good night.
night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.